Missouri is now one of 20 places suing the pharmaceutical industry over the deadly opioid epidemic. Correspondent Matt Finn is in our Midwest newsroom with what's led to the outbreak of lawsuits.
The scale of the epidemic we face is startling.
Missouri's Attorney General Josh Hawley filed a scathing new lawsuit against 3 popular drug manufacturers, arguing they committed fraud by lying to doctors and consumers about how addictive and deadly their prescription drugs can be.
Every parent disabled by drug abuse is a tragedy. Every child lost to this epidemic is irreplaceable.
Missouri named Purdue, Janssen, and Endo Pharmaceuticals in the lawsuit, one of the largest in state history. It says the companies helped create the worst drug abuse epidemic Missouri has ever seen, contributing to roughly 500 opioid deaths in 2015 alone.
It's something no parent should ever have to do, is bury their own child.
Jamie Fabick says her high school-age daughter died from a hidden opioid addiction.
We never got to see her graduate from high school. We never got to see her graduate from college. He never got to walk her down the aisle. If this sounds like a nightmare, it has definitely been a nightmare for our family.
Fox News reached out to each drug company named in Missouri's lawsuit. In an email, Janssen responded, writing in part, "Janssen has acted appropriately, responsibly, and in the best interest of patients regarding our opioid pain medications." Missouri is not the first to take action. It joins a list of states, counties, and cities investigating or suing drug companies amid a nationwide epidemic of opioid abuse. New government data just released shows there were 1.3 million opioid-related ER visits in 2014 alone, a 99% increase compared to 2005. President Trump has repeatedly pledged to bolster federal efforts to combat the opioid crisis. The president and Republican congressional leaders have insisted their plan to repeal and replace Obamacare will not pull out the rug from Americans who rely on the law for their substance abuse treatment. Brett?
Thank you, Matt. Let's talk more about why Missouri is joining other states in suing drug companies over opioid abuse. Joining me now is Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley. General Hawley, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, Brett.
So what brought the state to this action? What brought you to this point?
Brett, I announced a suit against the major drug manufacturers today to hold them accountable for a campaign of fraud and deceit that has helped perpetrate an opioid epidemic in the state of Missouri. They have engaged in a campaign over a series of years to convince doctors and convince consumers that opioids are not addictive, that opioids are perfectly fine to treat chronic pain, and that they have long-term benefits. All of those things are false, and the drug companies knew they were false.
We have a chart that actually shows Missouri versus the rest of the country in deaths, opioid deaths, 2015, 14, 13. You're at about 1,066 deaths in 2015. It seems like it is a problem not only in your state but around the country.
Around the country, Missouri has 160% of the national average in opioid deaths, so we're actually above even where the rest of the country is. You know, Brett, in 2015, there were 30,000 hospitalizations and emergency room visits in the state of Missouri because of opioids. So it is an enormous problem in the state of Missouri. That, by the way, represents a 200% increase over the last decade. It truly is an epidemic. It's an epidemic nationally, but it's an epidemic in our state, in the state of Missouri, and that's directly because of what these drug companies have done.
So what is the remedy? What's the ultimate goal with these suits?
Well, the goal is to hold the drug companies accountable. We are seeking hundreds of millions of dollars in damages and hundreds of millions more in civil penalties. But here's what I'd like to see ultimately. I would like to see fully funded recovery programs for those who are suffering because of this epidemic, rehabilitation programs, job training programs for those who have been taken out of the workforce and the labor market because of what they've suffered through, programs to help people get back on their feet and to help communities to heal. That is the ultimate goal, for there to be accountability, for there to be recovery, and ultimately healing for those who have been so badly affected.
General, let me ask you from this point of view, when you talk to people who are in chronic pain, and they are concerned that by this action and by the lawsuits here, that perhaps pharmaceutical companies will be prevented from or will scale back the ability to get the drugs that they need to fight their chronic pain, and they're worried about that, even though they acknowledge and the country acknowledges that there's a major opioid abuse issue.
Well, no one wants to see drugs that patients need not be available, and that's not the point of our suit at all. But I need to say this, Brett, that the drug companies, those we are going after today, have deliberately tried to convince doctors and patients, consumers, that these drugs are far safer than they actually are. So there are ways to manage chronic pain. We want doctors to have all the tools at their disposal to do that, but they need to be fully informed. And in fact, they have been subject, doctors have, and consumers, to a campaign of lies and deceit that have told them that opioid drugs are safer, are appropriate to treat chronic pain, when in fact, in most cases, they are not.
You've joined Mississippi and Ohio so far. Do you expect more states to join in this lawsuit?
Well, I think that's a distinct possibility. I can't speak for any other state, but I can say this. When you look at the scale of this epidemic nationally, and when you look at the scale of it in Missouri, and then you consider the evidence of these drug companies and their fraud and deceit and outright lies, I think it's hard not to see that something needs to be done, and that's why we've taken bold action today.
The last thing, how long do you think this is going to take, this process, this lawsuit, moving this forward?
Well, there will be due process for all involved. The drug companies will have the chance to answer for their misdeeds, but I hope it will be swift. We will certainly push for it to be swift, because the truth is, Brett, people need help. Those who are addicted need help. Those families who have lost loved ones need help. And of course, state programs, recovery programs need help, need funding. We need to move forward. So we're going to push as hard as we can to see that justice is done and that the companies who have perpetrated this injustice are held accountable.
Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley. General, thanks for being here.
Thank you.